Called 34 times. I know because I counted. I was sitting on the floor of my empty living room, back against the couch, watching my phone light up over and over on the coffee table like some kind of broken slot machine. And I just let it ring. 34 times. My brother has never once called me twice in a row for anything good. Not when our grandmother passed. Not when he totaled his car. Not for a single birthday in the last decade. But the night I told him no, really told him no, clearly and without apology, he suddenly had a lot to say. I should back up. My brother is 39 years old. His name is Derek. And for most of my life, I genuinely loved him the way you love someone you've grown up watching TV with on Saturday mornings. Someone who taught you how to ride a bike. Someone whose laugh you can pick out in a crowded room. I loved him the way you love family before you understand what family can cost you. I'm 31. I'm a project manager at a mid-sized logistics firm in Columbus, Ohio. I got there the hard way. Community college first because we couldn't afford anything else. Then a 4-year degree I finished at night while working full-time. Then entry-level job after entry-level job until I landed somewhere that actually had health insurance and a retirement contribution match. I don't say any of this to sound impressive. I say it because it matters for what comes next. Every single thing I have, I built myself, slowly in the margins of a life that didn't exactly hand me shortcuts. Derek's story is different. Derek has spent the last 15 years making extremely creative choices with his life, and somehow, every single one of those choices has eventually landed on my doorstep. There was the restaurant he was going to open with a friend. He needed $2,000 to cover the LLC filing and initial inventory. Just a loan he paid me back when they got their first month of revenue. The restaurant never opened. The friend disappeared. The $2,000 became a thing we don't talk about. There was the cross-country move to Phoenix because a woman he'd been dating for 4 months was there, and he was sure she was the one. He needed help with the security deposit on a new apartment. Just temporarily, just until he got set up with a new job out there. 6 months later, he was back in Ohio. The relationship over. Still technically between jobs, and the deposit money had been absorbed into whatever black hole existed between his bank account and his intentions. There was the motorcycle he needed because it would save on gas, the certification course he was going to take to become an HVAC tech. He just needed the enrollment fee up front. The 3 months he stayed in my guest room after his lease ended because he and his landlord had a falling out and he needed time to figure out his next move. I want to be honest here. For years, I told myself this was just how Derek was. He was a dreamer. He was unlucky. He'd had some tough breaks. My mother used those exact words so many times, they stopped meaning anything. Tough breaks, tough breaks, tough breaks. Like if she said it enough, it would explain away the pattern. And I let it. I let it because I loved him, and because saying no to family felt like saying no to something fundamental about who I was supposed to be. What I didn't see until much later was that the love and the money had gotten completely tangled up together. That Derek had learned, probably without even fully realizing it, that as long as I kept saying yes, he didn't need to change anything. That my mother had learned the same thing about both of us, that the whole system only worked because I was willing to keep being the part that absorbed the shock. The text came on a Wednesday morning in March. I was in the parking garage at work, halfway out of my car, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. I read it twice. Hey, so Melissa and I have decided we're going to take some time. Step back from the grind for a while, and just reset. We're not going to renew our lease in April. I know this is a lot, but we were thinking we could crash with you for a few months while we figure out the next chapter. You've got the space. We'd cover groceries. Melissa is his girlfriend of 2 years. She also does not currently have a job. She left her position at a dental office in January for reasons Derek described to me as toxic environment, and reasons my mother described as she just needed a break. I sat back down in my car. I put my coffee in the cup holder. I read the text a 3rd time. We'd cover groceries. My apartment is a 2-bedroom. The 2nd bedroom is my home office. I work from home 3 days a week. I had, approximately 4 months earlier, finally, gotten to a place where my savings account had a real number in it. I'd spent the better part of a year saying no to dinners out, buying store-brand everything, skipping the vacation I'd been planning since 2022, because I was trying to save for a down payment on an actual house. A house. My own house. A thing that felt, for the first time in my adult life, like it might actually be possible. I typed back. I don't think that's going to work for me. He called immediately. I sent it to voicemail. He called again. I let that one go too. got out of my car, and walked into the office. By the time I got to my desk, I had 3 text messages from Derek and 1 from my mother, which meant he had called her within approximately 4 minutes of my response. My mother's text said, "Honey, Derek told me what's happening. Can we talk tonight? He really needs support right now." I want to describe what I felt in that moment, because I think it's important. It wasn't anger exactly. Not yet. It was more like a kind of exhausted recognition. The specific feeling of watching something you've seen before start up again, like a movie you've already seen the ending of. I knew this sequence, I had lived this sequence, the ask, the immediate escalation to my mother, the framing of my saying no as a failure of support rather than a reasonable response. I had been through this enough times that my body recognized it before my brain did. My shoulders were up around my ears before I'd even finished reading her message. I called my mother that evening. I told her as calmly as I could that I wasn't in a position to have Derek and Melissa stay with me. I told her my apartment wasn't set up for it, that I worked from home, that I was trying to save money for something specific, and that Derek was 39 years old and needed to make a plan that didn't involve my spare bedroom. She listened. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "I just think family helps family. You have the space. You're doing well. He's your brother." "I'm not doing well because things fell into my lap," I said. "I work really hard." "I know you do, sweetheart. Derek works hard too." I didn't say what I was thinking. What I was thinking was, Derek has not held a job for more than 14 consecutive months in the last decade. What I said instead was, "Mom, this isn't something I can do." She sighed. The specific sigh she has, long, weighted, the sound of disappointment being carefully telegraphed. "I just hope you won't regret this," she said. I didn't sleep well that night. Derek tried a different approach the next day. He came by my apartment, showed up without warning at 7:30 in the morning on a Thursday, which is one of my work from home days, while I was still in my robe trying to get through my first cup of coffee. I opened the door and there he was, looking tired and a little rough around the edges, which is a look he has perfected over the years because it works on me. Or it used to. He said he just wanted to talk. I let him in, because he's my brother and I'm not made of stone. He sat at my kitchen table and he explained the situation to me like I hadn't understood the text. He and Melissa needed to reset. The lease was ending. They'd looked at other places and everything was too expensive right now. And didn't I know what the rental market was like? It was brutal. It wasn't a good time to be looking. They weren't asking to stay forever, just a few months, 4 at most, while they got their footing. They would cover groceries. They would be quiet. He knew I worked from home and they would respect that completely. I listened to all of it. Then I asked, "What does getting your footing look like? What's the plan?" He looked at me like I'd asked something slightly rude. "That's kind of the whole point of a reset," he said, "to figure that out. While living in my apartment. Temporarily. Rent-free. We'd cover groceries," he said again. "Derek." I set my coffee mug down. "My groceries run about $60 a week. My rent is $1,400 a month. I'm not going to do the math out loud, but you see where I'm going." He got a little defensive then. He said I was being transactional. That family wasn't a financial arrangement. That I had always had a way of making him feel like a burden. I want to note that he said this to me while sitting in my kitchen asking me to let him live in my apartment for free. I told him I loved him. I told him I was not able to do this. I told him that if he was struggling financially, I was happy to help him look for jobs, go over his budget with him, help him write a resume, whatever practical thing I could actually offer. But I couldn't give him my home. He left without finishing his coffee. The family group chat went very active after that. My aunt weighed in. My mother's sister, who has an opinion on everything and occasionally sends me Bible verses unprompted to say that family sticks together in hard times and she hoped everyone would remember that. My cousin, Derek's age, sent a message saying it was tough out there and we all needed to have each other's backs. There were several heart emojis. Someone said something about blood being thicker than water. I turned my notifications off and went back to work. My mother called again 2 days later. This time she had a different angle. She told me she'd been thinking, and she wondered if maybe I could just help them with a deposit on a new place. Not have them stay with me? She understood that. But maybe help them secure an apartment somewhere so they'd have options. She had looked a little into it. Most decent 1-bedrooms in the area required first month last month, and a security deposit, which could run $4,000 to $6,000. She wasn't asking me to give it to them, obviously. Just a loan. I asked, how would they pay it back? She said, once they get settled and Derek finds something. I asked, when do you think that would be? She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, you know Derek. It takes him a little time. He's 39, Mom. She did the sigh again. I'm not going to do that either, I said. I'm sorry. I think you'll regret how you're handling this, she said. He's the only brother you have. I got off the phone and sat very still for a few minutes. I want to be precise about what I was feeling, because I think people assume it was anger, and it wasn't. Or it wasn't only that. It was grief, actually. Quiet, tired grief for the version of my family I had spent my whole life trying to hold together with my own two hands, and the slow understanding that it had never been as solid as I'd wanted it to be. About a week after that, I got a voicemail from Derek that I've listened to more times than I should probably admit. He sounded calm in it. Almost eerily calm. He said he and Melissa had figured out a temporary solution. He didn't say what, and he just wanted me to know that he was disappointed in me. That when it really mattered, I had made it clear what my priorities were. That he hoped I was happy with the choice I'd made. I sat with that voicemail for about 2 days. I have a friend named Terry who I've known since college. Terry is the person I call when I've been going in circles in my own head for too long and I need someone to just say the thing plainly. I called her after the second day. She listened to everything. Then she said, he left a voicemail telling you he's disappointed that you wouldn't let him live in your house for free. Yes. And then you felt guilty about it? I mean, he's my brother. Okay, she said. I'm going to say this gently. You have been cleaning up after Derek your entire adult life. You have given him money. You didn't always have. You have given him time and space and energy and stress. And the one time you say no to something that would genuinely cost you significantly, and not just money, your home, your space, your savings plan, he leaves you a voicemail about how disappointed he is. She paused. You're not the one who should feel bad here. I knew she was right. Knowing something and feeling it are two completely different things. What came next is the part I didn't predict. I had been going back and forth for months about something at work. There was a position open at our Chicago office, a step-up in title, a 15% pay increase, full relocation assistance. I'd been nominated for it by my manager, which was flattering, and I'd been sitting on the decision mostly because leaving Columbus meant leaving my network, leaving Terry, leaving the apartment I knew, leaving my family, complicated as they were. I accepted it on a Tuesday morning. I called my manager and said yes. And then I sat at my desk and thought about what it meant that the thing I had been using as an anchor in this city, my family, my sense of obligation to them, had in the space of a few weeks revealed itself to be mostly a rope tied around my ankle. I told my mother about Chicago that weekend. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, does Derek know? Not congratulations, not I'm proud of you. Does Derek know? I haven't told him yet, I said. He's going to feel like you're abandoning him, she said. Mom, I said, very carefully. I was offered a promotion. I'm moving to a new city for my career. That is not abandonment. She made a sound. Not the sigh. Something smaller and harder to read. Then she said, I just think the timing is going to be hard for him. I told her I loved her, and I got off the phone. Derek's 34 calls came 3 days later, after my mother apparently told him about Chicago. I watched my phone on the coffee table, and I let every single one go to voicemail. At some point, they stopped. I sat there in the quiet and I felt, for the first time in a while, something close to peace. His voicemails were a progression. The first few were demanding. Where was I? Why wasn't I picking up? Did I think this was funny? The middle ones got more emotional. Didn't I understand what he was going through? Didn't family mean anything to me? How could I just leave? The last two were quiet in a way that almost got me. He said he didn't understand when I had changed. He said I used to be someone he could count on. He said he just wanted his sister back. I listened to all of them. I sat with them, and then I called him back. He answered on the first ring. I said, I love you. I want things to be okay between us. But I am not going to keep being the answer to problems I didn't create. You need to build a life that works without me as a backup plan. And I am moving to Chicago because it is good for me, and that is allowed. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "So that's it? You're just done with us?" "I'm done with this version of us," I said. "The one where I give and you take, and then you're upset that I don't have more to give. I would really like a different version. I'm genuinely open to that." He hung up. That was 6 months ago. I live in Chicago now. I have a one-bedroom with big windows and a view of the lake on clear days. I am 13% of the way to a down payment on something that will actually be mine. I have had dinner with Terry twice, because she's visited, and I have found a yoga studio I like, and a coffee shop where they know my order, and a farmer's market I go to on Saturday mornings that makes me happy in a way that feels almost embarrassingly simple. My mother and I talk on the phone once a week. It's careful still. She asked me 2 weeks ago if I'd talked to Derek. And I said we'd exchanged a few texts, which is true. He texted me on my birthday, just happy birthday and a balloon emoji, nothing more. And I texted back thank you and asked how he was doing. He said fine. I said good. That was it. It wasn't the conversation I would have written for us. But it was real, and it was honest, and it didn't cost me anything I couldn't afford to give. I think about what my mother said a lot. He's the only brother you have. She meant it as a reason to give in. What I've come to understand is that it cuts both ways. He is the only brother I have, and I would like, for whatever years we have left, to find a way to actually like each other. To be people in each other's lives, not a transaction, not a rescue operation. That probably requires him to do something different. Maybe it requires me to do something different too, to let go of some of the old resentment, to stop waiting for an apology that might never come in the form I want it. I'm working on it. Some weeks I do better than others. What I know for certain is this. The 34 missed calls are still in my phone's history, and I have not felt a single moment of regret about not answering them. I thought I would. I spent so many years afraid of what would happen if I finally said no, afraid that I would lose something irreplaceable, that the family would fracture, that I would become the villain of a story I'd been trying so hard to survive. And some of that happened. There were fractures. There was a version of the story where I was not the hero. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. And for the first time in longer than I can remember, I am standing on ground that actually belongs to me. I used to think that loving someone meant making yourself smaller, so they had more room. That's not something anyone told me directly. It was just the lesson I absorbed somewhere along the way. Watching how my family worked, watching what got rewarded, and what got ignored. Derek needed something, and I had it. And so the gap between those two facts became my responsibility to close. Every single time. For years. What I understand now, sitting in an apartment in Chicago with a view I still can't quite believe is mine, is that the way I was living wasn't love. It was fear dressed up as loyalty. I was afraid that if I stopped being useful, I would stop being valued. Afraid that the version of me who said no was a version nobody would choose to keep around. And so I kept saying yes. To the money, to the time, to the guilt, to the narrative that I was the capable one, and therefore the responsible one, and therefore the one who owed everyone else a softer landing. Derek is not a bad person. I want to be clear about that, because it would be easier if he were. It would be a cleaner story. But the truth is more complicated. He learned, over a long time, that a certain kind of helplessness worked. Not because he calculated it, but because it was never allowed to stop working. My mother kept the door open. I kept writing the checks. And nobody ever asked him to sit with the discomfort of figuring it out himself. That's not entirely his fault. But it's not mine to fix either. There's something that happens when you finally stop absorbing someone else's consequences. A strange, uncomfortable quiet. I felt it the night I watched his calls come in and didn't answer. 34 of them. And what I noticed, what surprised me, was that the world didn't end. The silence I'd been so afraid of turned out to be just silence. Not punishment. Not proof that I was a bad sister. Just space. Space. I had never let myself have before. Terry said something to me once that I keep coming back to. She said the people who drain you are rarely doing it out of malice. They're doing it because you made it easy, and making it hard feels like cruelty, when really, it's just honesty. The cruelty was never in saying no. The cruelty was in all the years of BS, that taught Derek he didn't need to build anything sturdier than me. I think about the kind of person I want to be, and it's not the person who always has money to lend, or a spare room available, or the emotional bandwidth to manage everyone else's emergencies. It's someone with enough integrity to tell the truth even when it costs something. Enough intelligence to see a pattern before it takes another decade. Enough resilience to keep going after the calls stop and the group chat goes quiet and you're left alone with the choice you made. That's what I'm working on, not perfection. I still second-guess myself, still hear my mother's voice sometimes when I'm trying to fall asleep, still feel the pull of the old habit. But I keep choosing the ground beneath my own feet. I keep choosing the life I built, and some days that's more than enough.